Let's change it. And this is the same David. How about David, the adulterer? I don't want to know that guy. I don't need to know that guy. What do you mean, David the adulterer? Well, David was an adulterer. David the adulterer. John Mark. Matt talked about John Mark. See, I like to think of John Mark because he's one of my favorite characters in the Bible, is the gospel writer. The guy that did some amazing things. But how about this? Mark the quitter. Because midway through his first evangelistic trip as a missionary, he quit. Mark the quitter. Let's go with Mark the gospel writer. Can we do that? Can we all agree with that? That's okay. Mark the gospel writer. Then this one really kind of changes dramatically. Peter. We talked about Peter. Y'all know Peter. Peter the disciple. Walked with Jesus, one of his first round pick in the first ever disciple draft. That's Peter the disciple. But how about this? Try this. How about Peter the denier? Same guy denied Christ. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So you see how it works when the title's good. It still works, but it's a little detrimental when it doesn't. Now, what's interesting about all these guys, regardless of the label you put on them, whether it's Peter the disciple or Peter the denier, he still went on, all of these guys went on to do amazing things for God, regardless of the title you put on them. You need to remember that because it's important to you and I, because I'll go ahead and tell you this. At some point, every one of us have been labeled some way or in some shape. Every one of us. But each one of these guys, each one of these, regardless of which title, did amazing things for God. Amazing things. David was a man after God's own heart. David the adulterer or David the king, God still said he's a man after my own heart. It's pretty powerful. Peter the disciple or Peter the denier was foundational in the church. I mean, Christ says, you're on my team. I want you. So you get the picture. Now, what I want to talk about today is I want to go all the way back to the Old Testament. And I want to talk about somebody, and their title is not real good. It's not real good. And I didn't do this, so don't get mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just sharing who we're going to talk about today. And you find her in the book of Joshua. Joshua's the 6th book in the Old Testament. If you want to go back and look, just start with Genesis and flip through to the 6th book, and you're going to get to Joshua. And we'll get to the kind of the narrative of Joshua. But let me share you what Joshua said, and I'll introduce the person we're going to talk about today. Joshua chapter 2, verse 1. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. And if you're reading this, you got to be really careful on how you say that one. Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. We're going to talk about Rahab today, the prostitute. And you're going, wait a minute, we're in church. You can't do that. Sure can. Joshua did. Old Testament, Bible, exactly there. And I told somebody in the first service, I said, I'm sorry, because somebody's going to have to explain what that is. I get that, and I'm sorry. But don't put so much emphasis on that. Let's talk more about what Rahab became, because that's so important. And this is a message of hope for each and every one of us, because every one of us has some kind of past. Some worse than others. Some may say, well, I don't really have a bad past. All then that is awesome. But almost every one of us has a past, just like Rahab does. And yet we're going to talk about her, and she's in the Bible. I mean, this isn't even a good start. We're into this thing 5 minutes, and I'm already talking about something we're not comfortable with. And I can see it on your eyes. I can see it. You're going to talk about a prostitute today. Well, yes, we are, because it's an amazing, amazing story. And what some of you are probably thinking, if you don't know the Bible very well, and by the way, if you don't, that's okay. We're awesome. We're excited with that. Thank you for being here. And some of you are going, man, I don't even own a Bible. Let us know. We'll give you one. And you can read all about Rahab, the prostitute, because it's important. But you think, so this is one time in the Old Testament, and they mention Rahab, and they call her a prostitute. And it doesn't end there. If you skip forward just a little bit in Joshua 6, verse 17, listen to this. Now, this is taking it out of context, but this is the story. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab, the prostitute, and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. Did you get that? Only Rahab, the prostitute. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies that we sent. Now think about that today in context of Twitter and social media and Facebook and all of that. Can you imagine if one of your family members was identified as a prostitute? You know my Aunt Rahab, she's the prostitute. I mean, I can hear her children go, Mom, make them stop. It's going to get lit up on social media that Aunt Rahab is a prostitute. Make it stop. It's so embarrassing. I don't want to see that make it. Please make it go away. Some of you are even asking, saying, why would that even be in the Bible? Why would it even be in the Bible? Because it's important. And I think, for me, this is where it's really important, because it's a message of hope for you and I. And you're going, well, I'm not a prostitute. You're still broken. You're still broken. And if you're this broken, if you label as then that would be very degrading in that time and even today. And yet we see this name mentioned, Rahab the prostitute. I mean, think about it today. We would disassociate. If my aunt was a prostitute, I would disassociate with her. I would probably disown her. I wouldn't have anything to do with her. That's how we function today. And please don't come up and give me your holier-than-thou story, because that's typically what we do. Absolutely. But here's the difference. God not only chose her, He claimed her, and He elevated her, even as a prostitute. Did you hear me on that? Because we want to judge everyone for what they are and what they've done, and God chose her, He claimed her, and He elevated her. And you'll just have to follow with me through this story. But that's what God did with Rahab. Now, let me back up a minute now. Let me share a little of the story, the narrative of the story of Rahab. And it's really a good story. Go back, open your Bibles, read Joshua, read a couple chapters of it, and you'll get the gist of it, but I'm going to kind of help you with it. Rahab comes along during Joshua's era. Joshua is the heir apparent to Moses. And again, for those of you that's not Bible scholars, and I'm certainly not either, but I can share the story with you. The Israelites had been held captive in Egypt as slaves. They have come out. They're wandering in the desert, waiting to enter the promised land. Moses, their leader, bless his heart, I can't imagine what he possibly, perfect guys, is to go to the prostitute's house. So they go to Rahab's house. It's amazing how God can work in it. I think sometimes He's got a better sense of humor than we do. But these two spies, they go over, they encounter Rahab, they start getting in trouble. They've got to find shelter. Because listen, they're spies. They're spies. The king of Jericho somehow finds out they're there. He finds out that they're at the house of Rahab, the prostitute. He sends his spokesperson there. Think about that one. This one's kind of interesting to me. Now, this is just me, and maybe this is my wrong take on this. So the king can't go to the prostitute's house, correct? I mean, that wouldn't be right for the king to go to the prostitute's house. So he sends his spokesperson. Here's what's interesting to me, though. He knew where she lived. Yeah, you'll think about that one for a moment. He sure knew where she lived, so he sends his spokesperson. Spokesperson knocks on the door. Now, you got to think about this. Here's Rahab the prostitute.